Hello and welcome to another episode of Fraud Friday. Today, we'll be talking about insurance fraud. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nkosana Koda. We have Grant Davis, Senior Manager at Standard Bank. How are you, Grant?
I'm good. How are you doing, Nkosana?
I'm fantastic. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So tell us, what is insurance fraud?
Insurance fraud, really simply, is when individuals, fraudsters, try to exploit a financial contract with an insurance company for their personal gain that they're not necessarily entitled to. One could almost extend that definition also to include, for example, where services or benefits due to our clients by insurance companies are not actually given, and knowingly so.
Mm. And what are the most common types of insurance frauds that are around?
Thanks for that question. Very interesting one, certainly. So one of the most common types of insurance fraud that you have in South Africa certainly is when customers basically put in fraudulent claims. And that's one of two ways, right? Either it's an exaggerated invoice or exaggerated claim, and we call that opportunistic fraud, or it's legitimately a false claim, i.e., for example, when you go and you claim for an accident that actually didn't happen, for damages that were on your vehicle 10 years ago, but you actually go and exaggerate or the extent of the accident, and you're actually falsely claiming. So our most prevalent forms of insurance, or at least fraudulent claims in the industry, is accident-related insurance fraud. So this is where people stage accidents where there's collusion that exists within that value chain, whether it is panel beaters, etc., all colluding to exaggerate the cost of the damages. So that's very frequent. Secondly, we also have things like, for example, retrenchment claims. And we see this particularly now with COVID-19, where people have been trying to take advantage of the system, as it were. Because when you take out a loan facility, you typically will take out some sort of insurance against your death in the event, to pay off the loan in the event of your death. So one of the ways people are trying to take advantage of the situation is putting in false retrenchment claims when they may have legitimately actually have been fired or resigned, or they're still working. And lastly, which is quite a topical one, certainly, is around death claims, both from the perspective of fraudulent funeral claims, where you've got a funeral plan and you're trying to claim, and of course life policies as well.
Wow. And does insurance fraud ever happen to people that weren't aware that it's actually happening, or is it always people that they're doing it themselves and they're fully aware, they're using their details and so on?
So definitely, it's definitely happened. We have definitely seen cases where people have had insurance policies taken out on their behalf, and then subsequently people have tried to now fraudulently claim against that. So we have definitely seen that. Another example certainly is when we see syndicates. So this is like very sophisticated groups of fraudsters who basically will work with individuals on the, any person that they come across, typically people who are unemployed, who don't know necessarily any better, and they use them as mules. And what they'll do is they'll actually create an entire persona, and these guys will go open funeral plans in their names, not knowing, and subsequently to that, people will then come and try and claim against their behalf when, they're deceased or anything like that. So we do see it, and we see it from people who are known parties, and we also see people who are also generally, syndicates, professional criminals at that.
And if it happened to, let's say, one of our Standard Bank clients, and is there something they can do about it to whether stop it, or is it too late by the time they usually find out, or what can they do when they find out there might be some claims that they didn't register for as an example?
Well, thanks. I think it's an important question. So, if you do become aware of it, I think you're actually in a very privileged position, right? Because obviously these people are trying to do this behind your back. So, whatever that means, if you do become aware of it, there's three really important things that you need to do. The first thing is, I would say, you definitely need to contact the insurance company that you are now aware is processing a claim purportedly in your name.
Yeah.
And your bank, certainly. Secondly is, I would definitely, to the extent to which you have been compromised, and you can get that information from whoever's processing that claim, because it's in your name. So this is information you can definitely get access to. I would actually say that you register again with the South African Fraud Prevention Service for protective registration, because you don't know to what extent your identity has been compromised that could potentially be used elsewhere. So I think that's certainly something that I would be aware of. And then I think lastly is, I would definitely then report the matter to the police. I think that's because your identity has been stolen and used to potentially benefit off your name and your credentials, and that's a crime. Yeah.
No, definitely. Lastly, is there any last thoughts that you would give us when it comes to insurance fraud that we should really be aware of, especially for people out there that have done absolutely nothing wrong or don't even know what's actually happening?
Look, I think what's really important is customers need to be very vigilant about any sort of interaction that you're having that's virtual or digital. You need to be incredibly wary about that. We understand that because of COVID-19, it has forced us to rely on more digital channels, maybe the telephone. And we know that insurance policies are actually sold via the telephone, right? Through contact centers, etc. It's really, really important that when you're giving your information, you have verified and understood who you're talking to. I think that for me is number one, is make sure that you're not talking to a potential. And how do you do that? I suppose that's the question. To a potential fraudster. Certainly one of the ways is by verifying the phone numbers that you're using. Most, if not all, major insurance companies have publicly listed telephone numbers or toll-free numbers available on their websites. Make sure you stick to those. Make sure you ask the relevant questions. And when things sound too good to be true, they probably will be. And you will get a policy document. Make sure that when that policy document comes, it comes from a legitimate place. And be very mindful of the email addresses that are being used. Be very mindful of the questions that are being asked. Because once people start asking for more sensitive information, you should actually start to worry.
Yeah.
And I would actually recommend that if you're feeling uncomfortable, call the insurance company on the telephone number that you see and just query whether this is authentic or not. They should have the record to be able to say, no, it was us that was speaking to you and we've initiated a policy on your behalf, etc. So it's just about being very cautious and protective of your personal information, whether it's filling it in a form, whether it's sending it on electronically. Be very vigilant around who you're doing that with.
Grant, thank you so much for the information you've shared today. Tune in next time into another episode of Fraud Friday, as we will be talking about DigiMe. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nkosana Khoda. See you soon.